The New York Yankees were just one win away from going to the World Series for the 7th time in 9 years. No team in baseball history had ever come from 3 games behind to win a best-of-7 series.
I was so angry at the 0-3 start to the playoffs against the Yankees. I was humiliated. I was embarrassed. I was thanking God for caller ID, all the calls from area code 212 on the cell phone. You'd push ignore because you knew what it was going to be. Just another winter of verbal abuse.
We are right outside of one of America's most beloved ballparks, and I'm right beside a great American storyteller, documentary filmmaker, Ken Burns. This is the first time that you've revisited a subject of one of your documentaries. What compelled you to say the game isn't quite over yet and you want to dive back into baseball?
Well, I hope it never is over, and God willing, we'll have an 11th and a 12th and a 13th inning every 10 or 15 years. We worked for many, many years to tell a 150-year-old history of this game. The last bit of action we described in that original series was the 92 World Series, and then we came out in the fall of 94 and there was no baseball. So we kind of went, And then as we watched the action, good and bad, on and off the field, takes place over the next 15 years, you began to realize we had to come back. And when the steroid scandal broke in 2005, we really wanted to find a way to put it in perspective. We've all lived through it. We all know what had happened. We all know where we were when this happened and that happened and winning the World Series. But we wanted to just cover all those things, good and bad. And the star of the film is the resiliency of the game of baseball. Plus, we got the Red Sox winning the World Series.
You are a fan. Did creating the 10th inning bring anything new to the table for you as a baseball fan?
Always it does, you know, and I don't want to make it as a fan, I want to make it as a filmmaker. I bring my love of the game from the fandom, but then after that, it's got to be a professional thing. So my co-producer is a Yankee fan. There were no fights in the editing room. She's as proud of the beautiful scenes on the Red Sox as I am about the scenes on the Yankees. So, you know, we work together to tell a complicated story, and part of the story of the last 2 decades is Joe Torre coming in, and without, still with Steinbrenner buzzing around, he was still able to tame that Bronx Zoo.
George Steinbrenner walks into my office before Game 2, and he says, "This is a big game." Well, yeah, I know it's a big game. Only 7 games you get to play here. And for some reason, I was in a goofy mood. And I didn't feel the same stress that I felt later on. But I said to him, George, I said, Maddox is pitching against us. We're not really playing well right now. We're a little out of whack because we hadn't played in so long. I said, we may lose again tonight. I said, but we're going to Atlanta. That's my town. I said, we'll win 3 there, and then next Saturday we'll come back and win the series for you. And I walked out of my office.
That's an amazing story. So are the Atlanta Braves trio of pitchers of Glavine and Maddox and Smoltz, and so is the rise of Latin players and Asian players. But so is the strike, and so is the steroids, and so is the glorious, greatest comeback in the history of our sport in the ALCS in 2004, which is covered in great detail.
First of all, I'm confident, and a lot of people misjudge that. People might say he's cocky. I'm fearless, intense. Some people might say he's mean. And sometimes, since I'm so intense, I'll strike you out, keep on looking at you. Because baseball has a little bit of psychology in it. If you see a guy frustrated with a changeup, you have to continue to throw that changeup. If you can't hit a changeup, I'm sorry. You're going to see it again.
Being a Red Sox fan, you know that fans are very passionate about the game of baseball. So is it difficult as a filmmaker to create a historically objective film about a subject you know your audience is probably going to go in with, predisposed opinions about?
It's so interesting because we've shared this with New York Yankee fans, we've shared it with San Francisco Giant fans, we've been all around, and people love it. I mean, we all think we know what happened, but basically we form fairly superficial opinions, and it's sort of binary, good and bad, black and white, about steroids or strikes or even the teams that we love. And what we've come back, and people tell us over and over, they said, I knew what had happened, but I gained new perspective on it. So if that's what we've done, then that's our contribution to it, and we're so excited to share it. particularly in Boston, where we waited so long for a championship. And that, as Tom Verducci, who is an impartial, writer for Sports Illustrated, said, no championship in any sport meant more to the people of Boston and New England than did the Red Sox win in 2004. And it is moving, and it'll be nice to relive it. Remember, this town had 6 times the population in it, crowding to say thank you to the Red Sox. And people were putting, notes on gravestones saying, "Dad, they did it," and that, you don't find that in any other baseball park, and you don't find that in any other sport but baseball.
A lot of your documentaries, you bring a sense of romance to the past, and you're talking about American history. Is it difficult to create that same feeling when you're covering events that are more recent?
Well, I'm glad you used the word romance, because too often we say nostalgia, and I think nostalgia and sentimentality are the enemy of any good history. And if you look at our first 18-and-a-half-hour, 9-inning series, it's talking about the dark underbelly as well as all the positive stuff. It's dealing with exclusion of African Americans, gambling scandal with the Black Sox, all sorts of different things. And so it's no different here. I had to tell what's so great and why this is still the greatest game ever invented, and I could go on and on and on. But I also have to tell you, there was this devastating strike of 1994 when our series came out. We were the only baseball in town, and I have to tell you about steroids, and I know you're all worried about it, and a lot of people think it's the end of the game. It's not. That's the good news. We got the genie back in the bottle. A 50 home run season is now a rarity, the way it wasn't during the steroid scandal. But I can reassure you, besides, the home runs being expanded, maybe some pitching careers being lengthened, no more 300 hitters. Nobody hit 406 as Ted Williams did in 41. No one had a 56-game hitting streak as DiMaggio had it also in 41. No pitcher won 40 or 35 or 30 games, which would be the statistical equivalent of hitting 73 home runs or 70 home runs as Barry Bonds and Mark McGwire did. So, baseball, which had the worst testing, now has the best. So we can say, thankfully, it's in our past, and the game is never more popular or profitable, and these beautiful new stadiums have been built. And fortunately, we've saved a couple of the jewels in Wrigley, and of course the oldest and the best, Fenway Park. So this is, you could say that this is the golden age. You could say that the quality of play on the field today, right now, is as good, if not better, than it's ever been. And that's good news for sports fans. It's good news for baseball. It's good news for the country.